Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Always.
Awesome. Today, we're heading back to ancient India, specifically the Mauryan era, 322 to 185 BCE.
Ah, the Mauryans.
We're going to uncover how they used art and architecture, not just for looks, but as tools of empire.
It's a fascinating stuff. The Mauryans were masters at using these grand creations to legitimize their rule, to project power and to cultivate this sense of unity across a vast and diverse empire.
So it's like they were building an image, a brand for their empire, through art and architecture.
Exactly. But to get their approach, you got to understand, they didn't just appear out of nowhere. They inherited a legacy from a period of huge societal change. Imagine ancient India, transforming from scattered nomadic tribes to settled kingdoms.
Well, nomads to kingdoms. That's a massive leap. Must have been total chaos.
It was. And those challenges they faced during this transition, roughly 600 to 300 BCE, weren't just about farming. Suddenly, you need entirely new ways to govern, manage resources, resolve conflicts. The complexity just explodes.
So all our complaints about bureaucracy today, they were figuring out the kinks back then.
In a way, yes. And here's the intriguing part. This shift happened around the same time as the Vedas. Those ancient Hindu texts were being composed.
Whoa, that's incredible timing. Were they inspired by these new kingdoms popping up?
It was a period of huge intellectual and spiritual growth. What's amazing is how Vedic ideas, like dharma and karma, got baked into these early kingdoms.
Okay, dharma and karma. I know those are big concepts, but I need a refresh. What do they actually mean?
So think of dharma as like a cosmic job description. It tells you what's expected of you, based on your place in society. Like if you were a warrior, your dharma was courage, farmer, provide food. Everyone had a role to play, contributing to the overall harmony.
So it's not just about being a good person, but fulfilling a specific duty and karma. That's the cosmic scorecard, right?
Exactly. Every action has a consequence, not just in this life, but potentially in future lives. It encouraged people to act in line with their dharma, because every action, it has a ripple effect.
Wow, so these weren't just philosophical ideas. They actually shaped how people lived and how these early kingdoms functioned.
Absolutely. Dharma and karma influenced everything. Social hierarchy, emphasis on duty, even how kings justified their rule. It wasn't just about brute force. It had this moral and spiritual dimension, adding layers of legitimacy to the whole system.
So by the time the Mauryan Empire comes along, they inherit this legacy of complex governance intertwined with this powerful symbolism. What did they do with it?
They took these ideas and they amplified them. They were masters at utilizing art and architecture to solidify their rule, project their power, and forge a sense of unity across their empire. A perfect example of this is the lion capital of Ashoka.
Oh, you mean those four lions standing back to back? It's a national symbol of India now. That's such a powerful image.
It's way more than just aesthetics. The lions represent strength, courage, and even the spread of Buddhist teachings, since Ashoka famously converted to Buddhism. But imagine walking through a Mauryan city. We've talked about the grand statues, but what else would you see?
Oh, give me the full sensory experience. What was the art like?
Okay, picture this. Intricate carvings on temples, delicate metalwork in the marketplaces, vibrant murals adorning the palace walls. Art was everywhere.
Wow. And it wasn't all just gods and kings, right?
You got it. They also depicted daily life, customs, relationships, those little human moments that connect us through time. Think about the murals in the Ajanta caves, filled with color, emotion, movement, showcasing the Jataka tales, stories of the Buddha's past lives, in incredible detail.
Amazing how art can transport us back in time. We've talked about art, but what about the buildings? We're talking about an empire here, right? I'm picturing massive palaces and fortresses.
You're spot on. Palaces for the rulers, of course, but also fortifications for their cities. Stupas, those dome-shaped Buddhist shrines. And impressive public buildings, a real mix of styles, all showing off the empire's power.
What building materials did they use? Was it all marble?
Mainly wood, brick, and stone. But what's remarkable is their mastery of certain elements, like columns, arches, and domes. They created these massive, awe-inspiring structures. And think about it. These buildings weren't just functional. They were designed to showcase the empire's grandeur, their wealth, and the king's authority.
It's incredible to think about the amount of work and artistry involved. So we've covered a lot. What about the lasting impact of Mauryan art and architecture? Did it all just disappear when the empire fell?
Not at all. In fact, they laid the foundation for centuries of Indian artistic and architectural traditions.
Wow, so their influence extended far beyond their own time, We can still see those influences today.
Absolutely. Think about the Lion capital. That's just one example. Their patronage of Buddhist art and their focus on grand, symbolically rich architecture. It had a ripple effect, influencing everything from temple designs to the art of later empires. Like the Guptas, it's like they planted seeds that blossomed for centuries. Their artistic DNA is woven into the fabric of India. You know, when we look at these grand structures and all the art that filled them, it's easy to get lost in the beauty and scale of it all. But there's something else I find really captivating: the Mauryans' approach to urban planning.
So not just focusing on pretty buildings, but how those buildings fit into the bigger picture, the whole city.
Exactly. They were incredibly strategic in how they designed their cities. They understood that a well-planned city wasn't just about looking impressive, it was about efficiency, control, and, yeah, projecting an image of power.
Sounds like they were thinking centuries ahead of their time.
Mhm.
What did a Mauryan city actually look like back then?
Imagine a city laid out on a grid, with these wide streets, distinct residential areas, designated spaces for markets, temples, administrative buildings. It was all very organized, very deliberate.
So kind of like a blueprint for a modern city.
You could say that, although with their own unique flair, of course. And they didn't stop at just the layout. They invested heavily in public works. Think irrigation systems, wells, roads, even rest houses for travelers.
Rest houses.
Yeah.
That's really thoughtful. I guess they didn't have roadside motels back then.
It was all about making trade and communication easier. Across this massive empire, well-maintained roads meant goods and information could flow easily, which was crucial for control and projecting influence.
So it wasn't just about conquering, it was also about building and connecting their empire.
Absolutely. And they were innovative in their construction techniques. One thing that stands out is their use of standardized brick sizes for a lot of their buildings.
Standardized bricks. That sounds so modern.
It was all about efficiency, consistent quality. It meant projects could be finished faster and more effectively.
It makes sense. So we've got well-planned cities, public works, standardized materials. Anything else that might surprise us about Mauryan urban planning?
Their attention to sanitation was remarkable. They had drainage systems, public baths, even designated areas for waste disposal.
Hold on, drainage systems.
Yeah.
Way back then. That's seriously impressive. Were they really that advanced?
They understood that public health was vital for a thriving city. It also reflected their concern for their citizens, which in turn helped legitimize their rule. Happy, healthy people are less likely to rebel, right?
Makes sense. So they were masters at understanding how it all fit together. Urban planning, public health, power. They were all connected.
Precisely. The Mauryans really understood how to weave these elements together to create this powerful and enduring empire.
So we've talked about their art, their architecture, their cities. If we had to sum up their whole approach, what made them so unique?
I'd say their mastery of symbolism. Every single element, from the lion capital to a grand stupa, even the layout of their cities, it all sent a message, carefully designed to project power, authority, a shared cultural identity.
It's like they were speaking a language of power through their art and architecture.
Exactly. But they also understood that beauty wasn't enough. They blended that aesthetic sense with practicality. Their cities weren't just meant to look impressive, they were designed to actually work, to facilitate trade, to improve people's lives.
That blend of grandeur and practicality, it's fascinating. But, like all empires, theirs didn't last forever. What happened? Did all their incredible art and architecture just vanish when the Mauryan Empire declined?
Not at all. Their influence persisted, long after their political power faded. Their art and architecture continued to inspire later generations. Everything from temple designs and city planning to the motifs used in sculptures and paintings.
Wow, so even though their empire crumbled, their artistic legacy kept going.
Yes, and their impact wasn't limited to India either. Their influence spread to neighboring regions, impacting art and architecture there as well. The Mauryans were real cultural trendsetters, leaving a lasting mark on a whole region.
It's amazing to think about that ripple effect, how their ideas traveled and shaped the artistic expressions of others. It really speaks to the power of their creativity and innovation. But I'm curious, what about the everyday people who actually lived during this time? Did everyone benefit from this grand vision, this flourishing of art and culture?
That's a really important question. The Mauryan Empire, like any society, had its complexities. There were social hierarchies, inequalities. Not everyone had the same experience in the empire.
Of course, so who are the winners and losers, so to speak, in this Mauryan era?
Well, for the elite, the kings and nobles, high-ranking officials, life was good. They had wealth, power, access to all the finest things the empire had to offer. They were the ones commissioning those grand palaces and works of art, enjoying a life of privilege.
Okay, the 1% of ancient India. But what about the rest? Did everyone else benefit from this flourishing of art and architecture?
Well, for merchants and traders, the Mauryan era brought opportunity. The empire was stable with extensive trade networks, so they were able to thrive. They were right at the heart of a bustling economy, connecting different parts of the empire and even beyond.
I can just imagine those bustling marketplaces filled with exotic goods from every corner of the empire.
It was a vibrant time for commerce and cultural exchange, and we can't forget the skilled artisans, the weavers, the metalworkers, the sculptors, the painters. They were in high demand. Their talent and craftsmanship contributed directly to the empire's artistic flourishing.
That's right. All those incredible sculptures and murals we've been discussing, someone had to make them. But I'm guessing life wasn't so rosy for everyone. What about the farmers, the laborers, the everyday people? Did they benefit from all this?
For the vast majority of the population, the farmers, laborers, those at the bottom of the social ladder, life was much harder. They had to deal with heavy taxes, often worked in difficult conditions, and had very limited access to power or resources.
So while the elite were enjoying this cultural blossoming, the common people were the ones actually making it all happen.
Unfortunately, yes. That's a pretty familiar story throughout history, and it's important to remember that even within those broad social groups, individual experiences varied based on region, caste, personal circumstances. The Mauryan Empire, like any complex society, had its winners and losers, its privileges and its disparities.
It's a good reminder that history is more than just these grand narratives and sweeping pronouncements. It's really about people. And people's experiences are always diverse. Even in an era like the Mauryan Empire, with all its achievements, there were many different realities, all happening at the same time.
Exactly. And by acknowledging those diverse voices and experiences, we can gain a more complete and nuanced understanding of the past. We can appreciate the Mauryan Empire's achievements, while also acknowledging the complexities and inequalities that existed within it.
It seems like that's a common thread in all of history, right?
Right.
The grand achievements and the struggles of everyday people, they're always intertwined.
Absolutely. Exploring that dynamic tension is what makes studying history so fascinating and rewarding. It's about understanding the past in all its complexity.
So we've journeyed through this remarkable period, explored everything from grand monuments to the lives of the people who built them. We've talked about their innovations, their cultural achievements, their successes, and their shortcomings.
It's been an incredible journey, hasn't it? I'm covering not just the power and grandeur of the Mauryan Empire, but also those human stories woven into its fabric.
And now it's time to shift gears. We've looked closely at the past, but let's turn our gaze to the present to see how these ancient echoes resonate in our modern world.
I'm intrigued. What connections do you see between the Mauryan era and our world today?
It's been amazing exploring the Mauryan era, seeing those stunning works of art and architecture, their innovative cities, and even getting a glimpse into the lives of the people who lived back then. But before we go, I gotta ask, why should we care about all this today? What can we really learn from an empire that existed over 2,000 years ago?
That's the big question, isn't it? And it gets to the heart of why we study history. It's not just about memorizing facts and dates. It's about seeing those patterns in human behavior, the choices we make, and how those choices, they echo through time.
So it's like holding up a mirror to ourselves, seeing our own reflections in the past.
Exactly. The Mauryan era gives us some really powerful lessons about power, leadership, and the challenges of building and maintaining a huge, diverse empire. Those themes are just as relevant today as they were then.
Okay, I'm ready to learn. What specific lessons can we take away from the Mauryan story?
Well, one of the big ones is the importance of symbolism, and even propaganda, you could say, in establishing authority. The Mauryans were masters at using art and architecture, even their city layouts to project an image of strength, authority, and a shared cultural identity.
Right. The lion capital, the stupas, the well-planned cities, they were all designed to send a message.
Precisely. And it's fascinating to see how that idea is still at play today. Think about how governments and leaders use symbols, imagery, even architecture to shape public opinion and reinforce their authority.
It's like this language of power that transcends time and culture. What other lessons can we take from the Mauryans?
Another key lesson is the impact of infrastructure and public works on creating a thriving society. The Mauryans, they invested heavily in roads, irrigation systems, those rest houses for travelers. They understood that good infrastructure was absolutely essential for trade, communication, economic growth.
They were thinking long-term, building for the future, not just focusing on big monuments, but creating a society that actually worked.
Exactly, and I think that's something we can learn from today as we deal with globalization and interconnectedness.
It's almost like they were laying the foundation for a globalized world, centuries before it even existed.
In a way, yeah, they were pioneers in recognizing the power of networks and connections in a massive, diverse empire. And that understanding is even more crucial now in our increasingly interconnected world.
So we've got symbolism, infrastructure, anything else we can learn from the Mauryans and apply to our lives today.
One last thought that sticks with me is the importance of balance. The Mauryans were able to balance those grand visions with a real sense of practicality. They blended beauty and functionality. Their cities weren't just beautiful, they were designed to be efficient. Their art wasn't just decorative, it conveyed powerful messages about authority and values.
It's like finding that sweet spot between form and function, beauty and practicality. That's a valuable lesson for everyone, leaders, organizations, even individuals trying to navigate our complex world.
I think so. The Mauryans remind us that the past isn't just a collection of stories. It's a source of wisdom that can inform our present and help us shape a better future.
Wow, this has been an amazing journey. From those majestic lions to those bustling streets, we've truly explored the heart of the Mauryan era. But as always, we want to leave you with something to think about, a question to keep the conversation going.
Okay, here's a final thought. If the Mauryans were here today, what would they think of our world? Would they be impressed with our technology? Would they warn us about the dangers of power and ambition? What do you think?
That's a great question to ponder. As we navigate this complex world of ours, it's important to remember the lessons of those who came before us, those who built empires, created art, and wrestled with those eternal questions of power, purpose, and what it means to be human. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Mauryan era. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into history.